Well, leaked emails from powerful people seem to prove that Brexit was a coordinated event, and some sought to purposely undermine former British Prime Minister Theresa May and install British Prime Minister, the current one, Boris Johnson, in her place with the express intention of drawing more powers aligned with the US and away from the European Union. Now, this story was published in the Gray Zone, and the author joins us to clarify because it is complicated and shocking, and we hope to break it down so that you understand it and then seek it out for yourself so that you can read these emails. The author is Kit Clarenberg. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Now, you lay out this cast of characters that you call the cabal. Can you tell us who they are and why you're calling them that? Because it's so interesting, right? This is a concentrated set of powers and you have information like going back and forth.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I call them the cabal because, the Oxford English Dictionary definition of a cabal is a secret political clique or faction, which seems rather apposite. This is a very shadowy cadre of almost completely unaccountable, unknown figures who are coordinating and conspiring in secret to achieve particular results. 99% of the general public will never have heard of them, and will probably be quite distraught that they seemingly exert so much influence over government, not only government policy, but also its composition. We've heard so much, over the years about how Brexit was, the will of the people, and that, it may well have been. It was the the largest democratic mandate in British history, with 17.4 million people supporting it. But actually, at the top of that, always kind of guiding this process has been, yes, a kind of completely opaque, shadowy group of figures. Who are pursuing, their own interests and indeed exploiting, an opening in the democratic space to further a particular agenda, which again, people would not have necessarily voted for if they knew about it in the first place. Which, if it were not for the leak of this vast tranche of emails and documents, they wouldn't have done. I'm fairly sure that stuff like this happens, all the time. And
Yes.
is actually probably quite run of the mill in terms of, it's kind of House of Cards style, conspiring and conniving by powerful people, whether they're elected or not. But it rarely, if ever, is it ever spelled out with such, in such a candid black and white way.
Yeah, I mean, in the emails you talk about, the emails show that these people are planning to spy on the Remain campaign, right? Undermine them, discredit its actors, so to speak. Isn't that kind of the way that these things work these days? How is it different from what we know about all political parties and what they're doing to one another at the time? And the emails show an intent to get rid of Theresa May. It's a lot like what the U.S. lobbyists do in the United States. We certainly see this with entrenched politicians in the United States, right? Senators can never be unelected. Like once they're in, they're in. So what makes this bad form?
Well, I mean, I think that what this represents is the kind of it's a very, very, very clear demonstration of the kind of the dangers of private spying, kind of privatization of espionage. So you have an enormous number of people who have military and intelligence backgrounds who, once they're kind of out of the service, so to speak, not only are they looking for kind of lucrative work, but also they have nothing to do. The devil will make work for idle hands to do. So they start approaching all sorts of matters which are more kind of civilian or civil society or kind of democratic in nature from this, from an espionage, active measures perspective. I mean, I think that spying on, digging up dirt and spying into kind of dirty tricks stuff is pretty mundane in politics and business now. But I think that really when you're getting into the sphere of proposing to use ex-CIA operatives to set up fake Democratic Party groups in order to infiltrate these groups from abroad, but also advocating and pursuing spying strategies in order to gather intelligence and dirt on like the civil service, which is a bureaucracy. I mean, that's really quite shocking and potentially illegal. And yes, the purpose of these people was in order to get tantalizing or titillating information to discredit these people and get them out of their jobs, because they thought they saw them as barriers to getting what they wanted. I mean, there's an enormous amount of criticism, both legitimate and illegitimate, about the civil service. But if you're getting into the realm of stating that you're believing that you have a right, and indeed, clearly having the means to completely disrupt the business of government, when you are, again, an unaccountable private individual, and being funded by a reclusive billionaire that no one's ever heard of. I mean, there's something just so innately seedy and shady about that.
Right.
And yes, sure, it happens all the time.
Sadly, yeah.
But, in the U.S., at least, we have campaign finance laws that say if anything is done to benefit one campaign or the other, it must be reported, right? So I don't know if do those laws such as that exist in the U.K.?
I mean, in theory, yes. And it's like they're both, the Brexit was the most investigated election in British history. And I think that people on both sides, engaged in breaches of the code around financing campaigns and all sorts of there was regulatory issues aplenty. But again, I mean, this was done completely in secret. The person running this is an individual called Gwyddion Prince, who's a well-connected member of Britain's defence establishment. He was getting payments sent to his wife's bank account, potentially as a means to conceal these payments from himself, from a completely private individual. So actually they were circumventing established laws on campaign financing by pretending they weren't campaigning, and this is all done in secret. So I mean, I think again, the US does seem to have fairly robust controls, far more robust than the UK in many ways. But the question is whether these things are enforced. I mean, I actually, again, it seems pretty standard for these rules to be broken because people just aren't looking.
So the idea that you say the emails show a strong bent towards the U.S., why, and specifically with the end to consolidate power in Washington and away from the European Union, why do these people want this, do you think?
Well, and can I just follow up with that? Because Caitlin Johnstone tweeted this morning saying this exact same thing that Natali she said, the push for a hard Brexit was all about pulling the UK war machine infrastructure away from Brussels orbit and further into Washington. Does that kind of dovetail with what Natali just asked you there? I mean, is that...
No, precisely. I mean, it's precisely the point. And I think this is, effectively what these people were scared of was that there are plans for a kind of more integrated European, defense and even intelligence structure. But I mean, that is, many years away. And indeed, I in practical terms, I don't really see how it could or would work. But they were absolutely terrified of this and being what they perceived to be subordinate to EU defence and intelligence structures. And ultimately, London has, since the end of World War II, been acutely aware that its continuing global relevance is dependent almost entirely on serving as a reliable junior partner, which is a phrase that crops up in numerous kind of internal British government files from that period, and therefore being able to perpetually piggyback off Washington's great financial and military might, and so
wait, junior partner to the United States?
Yes, absolutely.
Like they wave the big stick and we come along and hey, let's do that. Sure.
Absolutely.
It's funny you say that because I was reading Shashi Tharoor's book, Inglorious Empire, about what the British did to India. And he makes the case, I just finished it this weekend, that, the saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire, and it was the Pax Britannica, right? And that power has been purposely transformed because British colonialism is sort of out of fashion, but they can sort of have that power if they go along with American colonialism or American powers. And so it seems to be that the expansion of NATO and the expansion of American powers is now the Pax Americana. And there would be a reason that some people inside the United Kingdom would want this.
Yeah, precisely. And it's like, if you think about the kind of the global Five Eyes spying alliance, and I'll for your viewers who are uninitiated, I mean, this is a global spying network combining the US, Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's this international dragnet which hoovers up, every phone call, every email, text message, even baby monitor emissions, across the entire world. As a founding member. The two founders were the UK and the US, and they signed, I believe it was in 1947, they signed the UK-USA agreement, which was the foundation of this.
Which is interesting because that's the same year that UK left India, right? So it sort
Indeed.
of
Yeah. No,
something to do.
It's also the year when the US, which after World War II was committed to a policy of peaceful coexistence with the Soviet Union, invades Greece when British forces kind of lose all of their kind of they start running out of money and weapons to fight an insurgency in Greece, and so then the Truman Doctrine becomes the thing. But essentially, yes, that's the foundation of it, and then as such, Britain maintains a privileged position within this arrangement, where it is granted full access to any and all, or I think it's most, at least, intelligence which is hoovered up in this manner. And now
we don't use that word, we use vacuum. I'm just going to clarify that for our American listeners.
It's a story about Brexit.
Right, but when people say they hoover things up, not everyone understands that. Go ahead.
Gluttonized. But yes, anyway, so essentially, Britain maintains its privileged access, and
yes,
quite clearly fears it would lose it if the Five Eyes relationship was downgraded, or it ceased to be quite so intimately interwoven with Washington's military and intelligence structures. But I mean, again, it's like a question of just I think it's just delusional. Like, what can Britain do with its tiny military, which it requires US support to move its navy, air support to move its navy around. What it can do with this vast trove isn't clear, but it quite clearly very much values it. There are some of the documents Edward Snowden released make very clear that the GCHQ goes to enormous, which is Britain's signals intelligence agency, goes to enormous efforts to kind of impress and placate the National Security Agency. There's the phrase, "Oh, we need to be seen to show value." Because otherwise, yes, we won't be we won't have this quote unquote special relationship with them. And,
yes,
I
saw one tweet today that to you said, wow, so this is proof that the deep state actually exists. We hear a lot of talk about it, but this is proof that the deep state actually exists. And they will go to great lengths, of course, to try to hide this, to try to cover it up. And, a large percentage of the people won't ever hear about this, which is why I wanted to have you on and the reporting in the gray zone to get this story out there. What sort of pushback have you gotten from the mainstream press? Have you tried to, were you trying to publish this somewhere else? Were you trying to get this out in a larger way? What have you been hearing from government officials on this, who have been maybe trying to deny this?
I'm heartened that the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and even people who would not otherwise read the Grey Zone or actually have some kind of bizarre, irrational loathing of us have enthusiastically shared this and corralled others to do the same. I mean, we haven't had any direct pushback from these people as yet. Although these are nasty pieces of work, and I'm sure they're probably cooking up some kind of perverse backlash for us. But I mean, we have engaged on the media outlets. I would be surprised, given this is pretty seismic stuff. I would be surprised if it was totally ignored. I think that one of the most kind of striking responses that we got was there was an individual who was targeted by these people, who confirmed that they actually subsequently found out that precisely this thing was happening via a whistleblower. So, I mean, which goes some way to validating our reporting. I mean, one can only wish that they'd actually, raised the alarm about this sooner, because these people have, they're continuing to cook up diabolical schemes. to this day. They have enormous influence within the UK government. They have on first name terms with various ministers. We have some more stories to come, and I can give you a taste of
Sure.
the future.
Yeah.
That essentially the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel, who is imminently due to rule on whether Julian Assange gets extradited to the US, they are influencing Home Office policy, and even it seems drawing up her speeches for her. So yes, their influence couldn't be more significant, and again, completely unseen, completely unknown to not only the average person, but yes, almost everyone.
This tweet, I'll get you out of here on this tweet, which was from Craig Murray, said, "This is reporting of a once-in-a-generation importance about the British state. While you were being misdirected at Caldwalder and company into the entirely unevidenced allegation that Russian intelligence were behind Brexit, it was actually MI6. It was the British intelligence." Is that a good summation of it, or is that a little too tight?
Oh no, I'm very, very much in agreement. I think that actually for all of this, much like how Trump's victory was blamed on the Russians or somehow some kind of secret relationship. I think that this is effectively people like Codwalla were gained a platform because they blamed something they didn't. What they found an excuse or an explanation for something which they didn't want to happen. Which was, of course, foreign-born. It can't actually be the fact that British people voted for this. There must have been some kind of alien overseas corruption that produced this result. And it was a grand elite protection racket in which a lot of people who got it wrong kind of patted themselves on the back and said that actually we were right all along. But I think that I would be entirely unsurprised if the Guardian, despite the fact this would feed entirely into their alleged editorial outlook, just completely ignores this story, because I think it's just too difficult to admit that actually all along Brexit has been a wholly British phenomenon.
Yes.
What have you heard from Nigel Farage on this?
Oh no, not yet. We did send him an email, but there's a number of other references in the files, which will be again, we'll be reporting on later, where it talks about him receiving kind of intelligence product derived by Richard Dearlove. So I think he's got some questions to answer, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be watching your reporting. The reporting on this story has been amazing. I hope that it gets the coverage it deserves. We wanted to make sure that we covered it here on this show.
Yes,
please, I encourage all of you to go and read it. It's at The Gray Zone, thegrayzone.com. Read this story. Sit down with a spot of tea. And maybe a whole pot of it, because you're going to need it. This is a dense story, very, very well reported, very well researched and investigated. And Kit, we appreciate you joining us to share your story.
Anytime. Take care of yourself, guys. Have a nice day.
You
Absolutely.
too. Bye-bye.
We'll have you back when the update happens here. We'll love to have you come back on and talk more about this. So
God
thanks so
bless
much,
you.
Kit.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.